Hi, good evening. Welcome to Rappler Recap. You are tuned in to our social media channels. I think we are live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. I am Dwight De Leon, Rappler multimedia reporter covering the House of Representatives. And today I am joined by Lance. You, hi, Lance. Yes.
Hello. I'm Lance. I'm the Rappler reporter covering business.
Yes, and to our viewers, this is actually Lance's debut dito sa
That's
Rappler
great.
Talk. And this evening, we're going to talk about the proposed Maharlika Fund. It's been gaining traction here in the House of Representatives in just a span of 1 week. Uh, Napasa na siya sa committee level, and we are seeing a speedy passage of this bill. So, there are multiple developments today, Lance. We've been following this issue. For one, House leaders uh, have come to the defense of the Maharlika Fund because we know that this is controversial. And political heavyweights, yung mga nagdedepensa dito sa panukalang batas na ito ngayong araw. We have former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who herself is, an economist, saying that this fund, the sovereign wealth fund, is advantageous to the government. Then we also have the president's son, Senior Deputy Majority Leader Sandro Marcos, saying that this is an important piece of legislation and isn't new and should not be hindi dapat ma-politicize. So also, meron din tayong na-drag din si former Senator Bam Aquino in this issue. So, maraming nangyari today, and one of those, meron ding House Banks Committee hearing where there was a public consultation on the Sovereign Wealth Fund, on this Maharlika Wealth Fund. But siguro, bigyan lang natin ng context yung audience natin dito sa Maharlika Wealth Fund because it could be a bit technical. And baka hindi siya ganun kadaling maintindihan for some people. So, Lance, you have written a number of explainers and IQ pieces trying to laymanize the concept of a sovereign wealth fund. So, how would you explain that to the public?
All right. Okay. So if you look at the concept behind the sovereign wealth fund, it changes depending on who is proposing it. But in our case, if you look at the objective, or at least the objective that's written into the bill, you can see there that it mentions specifically national development. And from the hearings, you also hear that they're really putting a spotlight on how it's being used for national development. And for example, in the hearing a while ago, GSIS President Veloso even went so far as to say that he thinks it should be called a development fund. So in this case, he says that it'll be funding projects like bridges and dams, which usually get crossed off the national budget when we put it through Congress. Now, the basic idea behind the sovereign wealth fund is you pull together a lot of capital. So in this case, that's 275 billion from different government financial institutions. So you have GSIS, SSS, Land Bank, and DBP. But also in this case, it's going to be decided upon by the board of directors on where these funds will go, where they will be invested. So because you have a lot of capital, for example, here you have 275 billion in capital, you can negotiate for better rates, and you can also invest that capital into capital intensive projects like dams and grids. And they do the same thing in other countries, but there are some differences. For example, in our case, uh, we get our funds from the government financial institutions, whereas other sovereign wealth funds, they pull their money from, for example, natural resource extraction, like oil, or they get it from their own large foreign reserves. So that's not exactly what we do in our case, and that might be one interesting way to look at to look at this, the differences.
And you've mentioned how this sovereign wealth fund, how this article wealth fund will be funded. maybe let's just give our audiences a breakdown. The initial capital is 275 billion. Uh, it's GSIS will pitch in 125 billion pesos. SSS 50 billion pesos. Land Bank of the Philippines 50 billion pesos. And BPP 25 billion pesos. And from the national budget, it's 25 billion pesos. So, kanina, nagkaroon tayo ng House hearing dito. Currently, we're in the House of Representatives. I mean, cafeteria right now. But kanina, nagkaroon sa okay, okay, I'll repeat what I said because apparently I was on mute. But we were talking about the funds, how exactly the Maharlika Wealth Fund will be funded. And just to give you a breakdown, ano, it's going to be 125 billion pesos from GSIS, 50 billion pesos from SSS, 50 billion pesos from Land Bank, 25 billion pesos from the Development Bank of the Philippines, and 25 billion pesos from the national budget. And that's where some of the controversy is coming from because progressive groups or critics are worried na kapag ininvest mo yung pera na galing sa pensioners, what will happen kung biglang malugi or if you know if it happens that you put your investment in something risky and you don't get a return. So that's what was discussed kanina doon sa House committee hearing ng House Banks panel. There were multiple resource persons invited ano from various groups, mostly progressive groups of Bayan Muna, Courage, Kilusang Mayo Uno, Centro. I think there were also representatives from De La Salle University. I think the name is PPE. And this is the first public consultation on this issue. So nandun din kanina yung GSIS para magkaroon ng opportunity ang GSIS to respond to the fears of or the concerns of the public. So Lance, I think nag-usap tayo off cam ano, and what we got from that hearing is that there was overwhelming concern from these groups about the passage of the bill. Una, yung pace ng passage kasi this just came out of nowhere last week. We weren't really thinking that this was going to be a big issue. I mean, 2 weeks ago, but then last week it was introduced in the House and everything, and now we're facing the possibility of this being passed before Congress goes on holiday break by December 17th. So let's enumerate those issues or why there is opposition on this issue. Una, safe ba ito sa corruption? Because yan yung isa sa mga magandang ni-raise kanina ng isang dating kongresista, si former Bayan Muna Representative Nery Colmenares.
Yeah, actually. But before anything else, I just wanted to go mention that it's actually also not exactly the most new concept. I think even before this week or last week, the BSP mentioned that they had this in the works long before. So it was an idea that they were floating around. But yeah, it's only been submitted last week. And of course, there are many, many different perspectives on what we should do about it. And of course, there's the issue of possible corruption. And yeah, a while ago, former Congressman Nery Colmenares did mention that he feels there's a lack of safeguards. So, for instance, with all the exemptions that this bill will provide for the Maharlika Wealth Fund, he's wondering what exactly will be left for audit. So even if there's COA who will be auditing it, what exactly will they be looking at if it's exempted from the Salary Standardization Act, if it's exempt from the different taxes? And he also mentioned that even though most government agencies submit annual reports, that doesn't really stop corruption from happening anyway, right? So you have the instance of the Coco Levy Fund. And you know, the thing about reports is also that they look back into the past on things that already happened. So, what exactly are we doing to stop something from happening in the first place? So, that's one of the reasons that Colmenares brought up to oppose the bill.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to go unmute again. Kanina na pag-usapan din dun sa hearing, ano, yung procurement law. Isa din to sa mga sinabi ni Reyes ni Colmenares na yun nga kung pati itong procurement law exempted ang this Maharlika Fund process, ano nga yung i-audit pa ng COA? But then nag-release ng statement si House Ways and Means Panel Chairman Joey Salceda, saying na yung exemption dun sa procurement law, he's proposing dun, kasi right now it's still being amended, to limit the exemptions to, quote, those pertaining to minimum prescribed periods for stages of procurement and to restrictions on foreign or foreign-owned contractors. So parang basically kung sa initial version of the bill, mas all-encompassing yung exemptions. Now they're trying to limit it in response to suggestions or perhaps criticisms of those those who have expressed alarm on the bill. So anyway, Lance is currently has been disconnected, but so let's move on to another point on this bill. It's that bakit ba minamadali itong proposal na ito? And siguro just to give you a background, this proposal, House Bill 6398, was introduced by 6 authors in the House. Mostly, actually, you can classify them as either relatives of the president or from Southern Philippines. They are Speaker Martin Romualdez, Senior Deputy Majority Leader Sandro Marcos. We have the Speaker's wife, Representative Viada Romualdez, who also heads the Accounts Committee. House Majority Leader Manix Dalipe. We have Representative Jude Asidre from Tingog. And actually, medyo naiiba lang doon si Representative Stella Kimbo, who is also heading an important post. She is the Appropriations Panel Vice Chairperson. So, anyway, first reading ito noong last Monday, so that was, let me just check the date. That was November 28th. I remember we reporters received a press release from the Office of Speaker Romualdez, and then later that day, it was also passed on first reading, or it was, referred to a committee. And then, nagkaroon agad ng committee hearing the next day. Sa Banks Committee, they convened the next day. They convened again 2 days after that. That was a Thursday. And actually, this is their third hearing in less than a week. And if you will think about it, before that, this Banks Committee, convened only twice since August. That was one day in August and one day earlier in November, before the introduction of the Maharlika Fund bill in Congress. So you can really sense na they're trying to pass this bill as soon as possible, resulting in criticism from some observers that this bill is being railroaded. So, ayun. And kanina sabi ni House Banks Committee Chairman Erwin Tieng, he's distancing himself from supposed commitments to have the bill passed by December 12. At kapag sinabi natin ganoon, kasi galing kay Ways and Means Chairman Joey Salceda, yung commitment na yun. Nasabi niya December 7, dapat pasado na sa House floor, plenary yung panukalang batas on second reading, at dapat by next week o bago mag-recess yung Kongreso ay pasado na siya sa third reading. So ito rin yung talagang ni-raise noong mga resource speaker or yung mga kasama sa public consultation kanina, bakit kailangang madiliin yung isang proposal na at this point, marami pang tanong yung publiko. So, aside from that, kanina discussion din kung bakit o paano kung sakaling malugi yung mga investments na uh, na nilagay o ilalagay ng doon sa Maharlika Wealth Fund. So, ano yung sinabi nila doon, Lance?
Yeah, so actually, interestingly enough, the SSS was there a while ago, and they mentioned they never had a year that recorded a loss. So they always beat yung benchmark daw nila, which is they record a 4.5% real return. So meaning that's already including inflation. And actually, that was one of the reasons why Congressman Kimbo said that this is a safeguard. So historical returns might be the best way to assure ourselves that, moving forward, we'll be safe with this fund because we already see that the SSS has a good record now. But of course, we also have to remember that historical returns are never an assurance that it will be good in the future, especially if you're going to change how the fund works, what the money will be used for. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, I think, if I remember correctly, Nericol Monares also said that even with those assurances, if this goes bad, then it's still the pension members, it's still the taxpayers who will suffer. Because, of course, even with those government guarantees, you will have to get that from somewhere. And that can be, of course, our taxpayers.
Dagdag lang doon the proponents or kanina yung mga supportive of the Maharlika Fund, they're trying to distance it from the 1MDB fund in Malaysia, which, if we all know, it's been gripped by scandal, corruption scandal, and it actually resulted in the downfall of then Prime Minister Najib Razak. At ang sinasabi ng GSIS kanina at ng iba pang mga proponents in the past, iba ito. Kasi may layers of transparency and safeguard mechanisms. Kasi daw kung doon sa 1MDB fund ng Malaysia, kung ang talagang signatory lang doon ay si Prime Minister Najib Razak, dito there is a Maharlika Wealth Fund Corporation, and it is led by the president, but the board, there is going to be a board composed of other members. I think 15 sila yung total doon. Tama ba, Lance? And it will be composed of different government financial institutions, representatives, to make sure that hindi siya magiging prone to corruption. So ganoon yung sinasabi noong mga proponents of this bill. So today, aside from that, yun nga katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, multiple House leaders have come forward to express their support dito sa panukalang batas na ito. We have former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo saying that the government anyway has funds to invest, so bakit hindi gamitin? At itong fund naman ito, in essence, it can be housed in what can be thought of as a special purpose vehicle, and thus its operations can more transparently be observed, tracked, and monitored. Sabi pa niya, ang Pilipinas naman daw may history daw ng mga maayos na finance secretary. So in a way, siguro she's saying na lower yung risks dito dahil may magandang track record yung mga naging pinuno ng Department of Finance. Sabi pa niya, ito I'll quote her directly. This is a powerful statement that the highest official of the land will hold himself as ultimately accountable to the Filipino people for the performance of the fund. Because what we've said, si President Marcos ang magiging chairman nitong Maharlika Wealth Fund Corporation. Dagdag pa niya, at parehas sila ng line of messaging ni Senior Deputy Majority Leader Sandra Marcos na hindi na bago itong panukalang batas na ito dahil daw noong 2016, on the other side of the political fence, si former Senator Bam Aquino, when he was still in the upper chamber, he proposed a similar proposal for a sovereign wealth fund. Although some have pointed out online din that there's a stark difference kasi kung yung current proposal ngayon, yung funds initially manggagaling sa mga government pension funds, government banks, itong proposal ni former Senator Bam Aquino ay manggagaling sa General Appropriations Act or yun nga sa ating national budget. And dahil nga in a way na drag na rin yung pangalan ni former Senator Bam Aquino in the issue, he released a statement just hours ago saying iba daw kasi yung konteksto ng 2016 sa 2022, iba yung economic situation noong 6 years ago to now. Ang sabi niya, and I quote, maganda ang takbo ng ekonomiya, mataas sa economic growth noong 2016, mababa ang utang ng gobyerno at mababa rin ang inflation. Ngayon, gumagal ang ekonomiya dahil sa pandemya at mataas ang presyo ng bilihin. So, Lance, this issue or this matter is going to drag on for maybe at least until the next week or at least before Congress goes on a recess because marami pang questions dito sa bill na ito. And also it's also a question kung how the Senate will be receptive of this measure. So ayun, those are some of the major talking points for today, and we can expect more developments in the coming days. So we should tune in to our recaps and follow our website for more tech stories. Lance is closely following the story, especially from the economic angle. So I think you'll be writing more explainers in the coming days.
Yes, exactly. I'll definitely be doing a deeper dive into what sovereign funds are because, as we all know, they can be very different. And another thing, one last thing to keep in mind before we give our support or before we criticize the sovereign wealth fund is to look at the economic status, the economic, I suppose you could say, weather that we have. In like what Bam Aquino said, we have different states of the economy, both before when he proposed it and now. So that's something that we have to consider before we invest or before we start a fund like this.
Okay, so continue to visit our website for our tech stories and our social media channels for video explainers on this controversial Maharlika Wealth Fund. So I am Dwight De Leon and with me is Lance Yu, and this has been Rappler Recap.